join in a song with sweet accord, and thus surround the throne, and thus surround the throne. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God. On the last verse, then let our songs abound and every tear be dry. We're marching through Emmanuel's ground. We're marching through Emmanuel's ground to fairer worlds on high, to fairer worlds on high. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God. If you're on that march with us, say amen.
Amen.
Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this special evening. Father, we thank you for the message to come, that we may learn more about your precious word. Father, we just ask that you be with Dr. Baugh as he speaks, and what he presents, we might hide in our heart and keep in our mind, that we may be able to teach others. Father, we thank you for the visitors tonight. And we thank you for the classes for the children tonight. Be with Mrs. Baugh over there, Mrs. Noah, that we may be able to reach these children for you. For it's in Christ's precious name we ask it. Amen. Sometimes, you know me, I'm getting to the age where I go home and I look at my wife and say, "Who are you?" You know, but it's so good to see visitors with us tonight. And I'm going to ask you, if you're visiting with us tonight, would you raise your hand? We'd like to place a card in your hand tonight as a record of your attendance with us tonight. It's so good to have you. Just keep your hands up, and they'll be right there with me. Here they come, bringing the cards. And if you would, fill that card out, and we're getting ready to take our evening offering. And again, while they're passing these cards out to you, we'd like to remind our membership and anyone else that would like, that if you want to put an offering in for our camp, for our children's camp, just mark that envelope camp and put it in there. Otherwise, it'll go into our general offering. Right here, Brother James. Turn his mic switch on. It doesn't have a switch. This one, can you hear me? Wow. Well, I'm loud. You can hear me back there, can't you? Brother Sonny in the rooms back there is nodding at me so they can hear me. But if you place that card in the plate as it's passed now, and I want to ask our ushers once again, they just got to the back, if they would receive the offering plates and come forward, we'll take our offering at this time. Again, it's so good to have each and every one of you with us. How many of you are here for the very first time? Amen. Amen. Very first time. Sonny, you need somebody to help you? Brother Dwayne right there will help you. I'm going to ask Brother James Bullard if he'd lead our prayer and offering.
Dear Lord, we thank you for the opportunity tonight to come to your house, Lord. We're thankful for all of the visitors, and we're looking forward to Dr. Baugh's presentation.
Yes.
We'd ask if you would be with those that have special needs tonight, Lord, those that are ill and in the hospital, those that have lost loved ones. Be with our country, Lord, and be with our military people throughout the world. Keep them safe, Lord. And we'd ask that you bless this offering. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Dolores. Thank you so much. And Brother Chuck, I was humming along with her, and then I realized my mic was on. Shouldn't have been doing that. That sure ruins a good offertory, doesn't it? Brother Sonny, you turned me up, I think, back there. Sounded like I was growling. Okay, when I was humming. Anyhow, it is wonderful. This is a wonderful crowd tonight. Are you sure you're in the right place? I'm going to be talking tonight, and I'm so pleased that all of you are here. I'm going to reward you tonight. I'm going to let you out on time. Isn't that good? Now, we have 3 of our dear folks who attend the lecture over at the Creation Evidence Museum every month, and they attend twice a month when I teach a Bible class at Robert Summers' home. And they know that I rarely close on time, or they plan to stay longer. They're here tonight, and they're going to be rewarded. I have to let everybody out. Brother Payne said you need to stay on schedule because the young people want to come over after we're finished here to see these priceless artifacts. At the end of the class, like 2 or 3 minutes after 7 tonight, I'm going to take these 2 artifacts that I got out of safety deposit. They have not been out of safety deposit in almost 20 years. I'll explain to you at the end of the class tonight what these are. I'm going to stand down at the front, and you're going to see, well, let me just tell you, you're going to see a bona fide section of wood from Noah's Ark. This section of wood was taken from the adjacent site where NASA's satellite ground-penetrating radar was able to pick up a wooden structure broken into components, but large sections of a wooden structure. Under the ice and snow, they can penetrate 300 to 500 feet under the snow. And we knew exactly where to look, and because of NASA's work. And that was in 1990. And as we were flying the site, in a Russian-built Mi-8 helicopter, you're going to see a photo of that tonight. As we were flying the site, I personally saw a huge beam of laminated wood, about 4 feet thick, about 12 feet long, about 2 feet wide, sticking diagonally out of the ice and snow. If you know much about the word gopher in the Hebrew, the ark was made of gopher. Gopher is not a species or variety of wood. There are a number of woods that would qualify. Mahogany would qualify. Teak would qualify. Hickory would qualify. Mahogany is probably our best guess. But the word gopher is not a species or variety of wood. The word gopher means in the Hebrew to house in. It's an engineering technique. Put your hands together like this, clasp them and try to pull them apart. The more you pull, the stronger they hold together. That's essentially what the ark was made, the technique used for the ark. And God said He told Noah, you're to pitch it within and without with pitch. We get the idea that He simply took tar and daubed the outside for waterproofing. Not so. And waterproofed it inside. Not so. The pitch was not tar. It was tar as a result of the aftermath of the flood. It was hydrocarbon-based. It was a natural resin like birch bark residue extract. When you use that and laminate the material in thin strips, It is stronger than the wood itself. The adhesive is permanent. It penetrates all the wood. It water seals it. And it works to the point where it's already crystallized. Are you getting this? It's already crystallized. Therefore, it does not biodegrade to a great extent under the weather elements. So I saw that huge beam of laminated wood. From that site, in 1969, before we were there, a number of people have been near the site. From that, an adjacent site to that, 1969, Fernand Navarro, Alfred Lee, Dr. Bud Crawford, and others retrieved a few sections of wood. This is one of them. This was carbon dated, 4,500 years old. That's exactly the age of the flood and the ark. Not only that, you'll see tonight where they cut it in 3 places, diagonally to make sure from every angle, and the pitch penetrated all the cellular structure. You're going to see this tonight if you can get me to stop soon enough. Then, along with that, in 1990, under the sponsorship of the Creation Evidence Museum and Dr. Don Shockey, we performed the 11 separate helicopter sortie expeditions. Most of the team went back. 3 of us stayed over and met with our attorney, and that's when we climbed the mountain up to 14,000 feet. We had flown it 11 times. We met with our attorney and one of the archaeologists who had excavated at Korhan. Now that may be a strange word to you, but the village of Korhan was built high on Mount Ararat at the tree line. At Korhan, there are foundations that are about 2 feet wide and a few walls left that are about 2 feet wide. Now, there's a church that dates back to Byzantine times in the 600s, remnant of that, but the church was built there because of the village that was built there in ancient antiquity. According to their legends, they're only as good as the legends, but there's some credence to them. The only absolutely perfect record ever written is the Bible, God's Word. And all the class said, Amen. But according to their legends, and there's a lot of credence to this because it's there as long as anyone can remember from recorded time outside the Bible, this village of Korhan was built by Shem. And that's the place where Noah, after disembarking from the ark, where Noah built an altar, sacrificed and worshiped God. And then Shem remained in that area and established his family and established that village and those foundations. Well, this archaeologist with his team had been excavating at Korhan. They discovered in the ground a priceless treasure. Not a diamond, more valuable than that. Not a gem, not a ruby, more valuable than that. They discovered a little bronze dog, about 2 inches long, about 1.5 inches high, with a pleasant face, little bronze dog. On his back are 2 birds. The smaller bird, the female, has her head and shoulders tucked under the wing of the larger bird, the male. On the ears of this little dog are 2 large insects, like earmuffs, but they're not earmuffs, they're insects. On the neck of the little dog is wrapped a ferret, a little additional mammal. So that way we know it's a female dog. She dressed up. Kind of ferret, you know. And under the belly of the little dog is the mate to the ferret, hanging on. On each side is a snake. So here we have all of the animal kingdom represented. And the little dog, the archaeologist said it's obvious the little dog was just happily taking his buddies on the ark. That's how they got on the ark. And we'll study more about that tonight. Here we have the mammals and the dog and the two ferrets. Here we have the birds, the avian creatures. Here we have the reptiles. And the Bible says that there are three kinds of flesh, and flesh of birds, flesh of beasts, flesh of man, or mammals. Man, of course, is made in the image of God. And then, not regular flesh, but other life form of the insects. So all four of those basic life forms are represented in that one priceless little treasure. I got it out of safety deposit after 20 years. It is here. You're going to get to see it. Both of these tonight. So I'll stop in time so we can line up and come around this way, because I then want you to take a look at this marvelous painting. This painting was done by Alfred Lee, who climbed Mount Ararat 3 times, and he painted this from the description of George Hagopian, who in 1904 and 1906, as a 10-year-old boy and a 12-year-old boy, George Hagopian from Armenia, was taken up to the ark by his uncle. His uncle said, every boy, every man in his lifetime must see the ark. Took him up to the ark, lifted him up on the step section. I'll talk more about that in a few moments. Extending off the back, he went up to the top, went along the window system. I'll have more photographs to describe that to you. And so Alfred Lee painted this. Alfred Lee was actually the scribe and the youngest member of the 1969 search group that climbed Mount Ararat with Fernand Navarro. And he carried the wood down on his back. He carried this down on his back. I had him on a television program, and he identified it because of the particular slant, the wood itself, and the slant where they sectioned it for carbon dating and to examine the pitch that it went through, the entire structure. And on global television with about 7 million viewers, he identified this. It is bona fide. You'll see both of these right about 7 o'clock, somewhere give or take a couple of hours tonight. About 7 o'clock. No, you'll see it at 7 o'clock. The teens are coming over at 7:30. Now, Brother Payne asked that I would teach on the ark. I was preparing to teach on prophecy, but he said, would you teach on the ark this year? So tonight, I'm going to show you how Noah built the ark. How do I know? Well, after 40 years of research and attendant to a lot of scriptural study and engineering study, I want to show you the probable way that Noah built the ark. We are building at the Creation Evidence Museum a 25-foot scale replica of the ark. And this is the technique we're going to use to build the ark. And it's consistent with the word gopher in the Scriptures. So I'll explain that to you. Now the plan is that tonight I'm to show you how we believe Noah built the ark. Tomorrow night, the plan is that I'm to teach you the lesson on the worldwide flood, the world of Noah and the worldwide flood. And then Wednesday night, as it was in the days of Noah. However, I have an idea that there's so much information on this first system that I can't get it all in tonight. It'll take at least 2 nights, maybe 3 nights, to teach you how Noah built the ark. Now, each of the sessions, tonight, tomorrow night, and Wednesday night, I will have these treasures with me. I do not travel with these treasures. I won't be carrying those around from church to church. But if you want to bring your friends the next 2 nights, at the end of each session, I'll be showing these 2 treasures. Not many people can say they have actually seen a piece of wood from Noah's Ark, but you'll be able to do that. All right, are you ready to roll? We want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to look at the painting. So tomorrow night, when you come early, feel free to step up and look at it extensively. There's so much information there. To the left is a photograph of our new geologic column at the Creation Evidence Museum. That column is 20 feet tall. Beside it, there's a character. Who's that character standing with a column? I mean, a likeness of a character. Tom Landry, yes, Tom Landry. Tom was a wonderful Christian man, great, great coach, and a fine creationist. Robert Summers, my buddy in Glen Rose, sculpted the likeness of Tom Landry for the Landry family and Jerry Jones. And this is the original clay. They molded this clay, and then from that they cast the bronze that Jerry Jones has at the Cowboy Stadium. Now, Jerry Jones thinks he has the original. But the original is at the Creation Evidence Museum, and you can see it. But by Tom Landry is that entire geologic column. It starts with the granite, the Precambrian, the Cambrian, goes all the way through the coal, goes all the way from, now, don't worry about these names, Paleozoic, Cenozoic, and Mesozoic, through all of the three basic eras, runs all the way to the top. And according to evolutionary theory, are you awake? Now, are you awake? We're going to hit the road running. Each night we'll stay right on schedule. According to evolutionary theory, it took 550 million years for that column to form. But all of those rocks are sedimentary rocks. How do you get sedimentary rocks? They have to be laid down by water. Many of those layers literally band the entire globe, like the Cretaceous layer that runs through Cleburne, through Glen Rose, was first examined scientifically and described in the technical literature near Austin. Now, it's called the Austin Chalk, not because it's chalky, but because it's rather white. From Austin, it runs through Glen Rose, through Cleburne, through Fort Worth, Dallas, runs 1,600 miles to the eastern seaboard of the United States. Now, are you still with me? I'll ask you periodically if you're still awake. 1,600 miles to the eastern seaboard. It picks up again the same system of layering. The markings are consistent. Picks up again at the White Cliffs of Dover. Runs throughout Europe, throughout Russia, throughout Scandinavia, throughout China. Runs throughout Israel. Runs south throughout Africa. Back to Texas. From Austin, it runs south throughout Mexico, Central America, South America. It runs north throughout all of the continental United States and runs through Canada. It runs west from Austin, is broken up with the Rockies, picks up and runs all the way to the western seaboard, picks up again in Australia and Fiji and New Zealand. It is a global band of sedimentary rock. That demonstrates scientifically it had to be a global, worldwide flood. There was a flood. And you overcame that flood because your ancestor got on board the boat. Now, that geologic column, when you come to Glen Rose, you look way down in that lowest sedimentary deposit, you will see a replica of the Meister print, a human sandal print with stitching around the side. Now, that's in rock that's supposed to be 550 million years old. Somebody's got a problem. Man, according to evolution, didn't arrive even in dawn grunting form until 2.5 million years ago. And man capable of stitching a sandal didn't arrive until a few tens of thousands of years ago, according to evolution. It wasn't the guy who stitched it in, it was his wife. It was his wife who did the work, you know. She was better at it than he was, so he just sat over there and let her do it. Is that the way it works at your house? Sometime, okay. So, there at the bottom of that geologic column is that sandal replica of it. Then you look up a few feet and you'll see a cup in coal, a metal cup in coal. According to evolutionary theory, that coal is mid-Pennsylvanian and is assigned an age of 395 million years. What's an iron cup doing in it? if it's 395 million years old? Somebody's got a problem. You look on up, and you see on the Permian a human sandal print. There were human footprint, 8 inches long. There were 9 of those, the AM coffee prints. That Permian's supposed to be 225 to 256 million years old. It's not. Look on up, you'll see a dinosaur bone, then you'll see a hammer in rock, you'll see a finger, you'll see 2 more footprints. That entire geologic column was laid down during Noah's flood. As the waters were rising and then became global, and as the moon attracted those waters and brought them into resonance, every 12 hours on each side of the globe, every 12 hours, you have a new sedimentary deposit. So you need to see that photo, and you need to come to the Creation Evidence Museum and see that 20-foot column. So a cynic, a critic, will walk in and say, now wait a minute, you got to be joking me. Those are replicas. Anybody can fabricate those things and try to say that there's the Meister sandal print at the bottom, a cup and coal, the coffee print, the Willett print, the Delk print, the iron hammer. Anybody can say that's what those represent. Oh, well, okay. Go to the middle of the museum and we've got the originals, encased under full security. The original cup, the original hammer, the footprints that we've had spiral CAT scanned. We've got the evidence if you want to see the evidence. All of that to say that there really was a worldwide flood. And there really was an ark. And Noah was your forefather, and you are my cousin. A few years ago, one of our black scholars, Dr. Willie died. Dear, dear brother. He has 3 PhDs and 7 doctorates altogether. Wonderful scholar, wonderful man. I was getting ready to fly to Israel. At the airport, the phone rang, I picked it up, it was Father's Day. And Dr. Dye said, I want to wish you a happy Father's Day. And I said, Brother Willie, that's wonderful. He said, I guess you know, I think of you as my father and there's not a thing you can do about it. Well, that's good. Now, I'm not his father, but there's not a thing I can do about it. That's great. So I'm your cousin. There's not a thing you can do about it. We're all related. Now, we've got 35 minutes to learn a lot. Are you conditioned? Are you ready? Okay. Here we have on the screen, I hope you're where you can see the screen. All right. Here we have on the screen that flood represented that I just told you about. And over at the museum, we have this on a big chart, and at the bottom down here, we have the sedimentary layering being placed. On that flood, we've got the boat, the ark represented. We see quite often representations of the ark in childish form. We're going to see some of the representations, a few of them tonight in this series. We're going to see the representations. Even great artists tend to paint the ark according to the technology of their day, but that's not sufficient. The Bible described the ark specifically in a 6-to-1 ratio that was relatively shallow. Now, the ark was 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high. How long is a cubit? 18 inches. That's what we normally say. Why? Now, the Bible said in the 600th year of Noah's life, the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the windows of heaven were open and began to rain. First, the fountains of the great deep were broken up. Then those windows of heaven were opened and it began to rain. And there was a boat with the right structure, the right cubit relationship. And I'll show you more about that. So how long is a cubit? 18 inches. That's what we normally say today because historically, now the Bible doesn't say exactly how long a cubit was or is. There's a reason for that. It changed depending on the monarch. It was either the length of the monarch's forearm from his elbow to the tip of his fingers. Today that would be about 18 inches. Or the length of his first newborn male child, whichever was longer. The monarch wanted the biggest and the best. So, every time you'd change monarchs, he would tear one building down or build another building according to his cubit. Well, if you were here last night, I described briefly the world before the flood. In that world before the flood, we had greater atmospheric pressure. People were larger. There were giants in the earth. Everything was larger in the world before the flood. So from the elbow to the tip of Noah's fingers was a little longer. There's the royal cubit, and that's what we're using. It's 20.5 inches long. That would make the ark 500 feet long, 86 feet high, 52 feet high. Now, did you get that? 500 feet long, 86 feet wide, 52 feet high. That's a 6-to-1 ratio. 6-to-1 ratio. Watch. I was lecturing near Kansas City, and in the class was a naval engineer. He'd spent a career and then retired. And he told about his experience with his graduating senior class. He said, at that point in time, I was not a participant with the right structure, but let me tell you what happened. He said, the professor built a flume. That's a big vat. And he had fans, and he had motors where he could rock the thing and create a storm at sea like that. He said he gave us one dimension, a length. That length would fit a ship with that flume, would match the flume. And he said we were just given one dimension, the length. And we were divided into cells. 4 or 5 guys in this cell, 4 or 5 guys in this cell, that one, that one, that one. And he said the job was, in order to graduate, a large amount of the class credit and grade had to do with whether that thing would float. So he said, these guys got serious. They built beautiful ocean liners. All they had was the length. But one group decided to build their boat like the ark. And it was basically a barge. It wasn't going to go to any destination. It was basically to survive, and God was steering it. So it was basically a barge, not square, but pretty close, as you'll see in a few moments. So he said the morning of exam came, and here came these groups in, proudly holding their gorgeous boats, like modern vessels, and others like ancient vessels, gorgeous boats. And sheepishly, this little cell came in with their Noah's Ark tucked under their arms. So they all put them on the big flume. And the guys put Noah's Ark there. It looked pretty unusual compared with these modern vessels. So the professor turned the waters on. They began to churn. Then he turned the fans on, representing the winds. And he said in about 10 minutes, every single vessel model was at the bottom of the water except for one. Which do you think survived? The ark. Why? He said the ratio and the way it was basically blocked at the ends. The ratio of it meant that every time the professor changed the waves in the wind, those waves ran along the side and it kept turning into the wind. And into the waves. And he would come at it from another angle. And the thing just kept, because the wave struck the side, ran along the side, and pushed it where it kept turning into the waves and into the wind. Couldn't sink it. I like that. How do you think Noah came up with that idea? He didn't. He just listened, and that was good enough. So we're going to talk about this wonderful ark. How did it happen? This is Mount Ararat. I climbed that mountain in 1990. This is Ishak Pasha at the base of Ararat. That's the palace of the Ishak, who was the ruler of that area in the 1300s. Marco Polo spent 6 weeks in that palace. I've been in that palace. The Ishak is buried down underneath it. I didn't bother about that. I left that alone. Marco Polo was there, and various people came to him telling about their climb up there and that the ark really was there in the 12 and 1300s. So that is a representation of the fact that there have been sightings. Where is the ark? Well, this mountain is 17,000 feet high. The ark is right there, but you can't see it. How do we know it's there? Because of satellite surveillance. As I told you last evening, NASA called me because they knew that we had access. They knew we had accessed the area. And I went into classified with 2 of them. They registered me as one of their members of research team. I went in, looked at their classified material. They didn't know where it was, but I was able to pinpoint where it was. We focused in on that. We saw not only the components, and it had broken, and there actually were 3 levels at the end of a broken section. We were able to actually see planks running across the deck. We were able to count the number of steps built onto the back end of it. I'll describe more about that in a few moments and why it was there. So the ark really is there. I've seen components of it in NASA's classified files. In addition to that, when I was there and we flew the mountain, I saw, as I told you a few moments ago, that huge beam of wood. That's the mountain, and the ark is right there, but that's a huge mountain. All right, how did Noah build the ark? It's going to take some time to discuss this. I'm going to have to read some of this to you because I want to make sure that you get all the details. But there are enough photos and diagrams scattered throughout the data that you won't have to listen to me read all night, okay? And we only have 25 more minutes till this is over. Okay, are you awake? You still with me? All right. With Noah's pre-flood intelligence, now I've got to bring the new ones up a little bit on this. I told the church last night that each of us has about 100 billion brain cells. But genetically, we produced 200 billion brain cells. In the 3rd trimester, when the baby is basically formed and the brain is basically formed, in the 3rd trimester of incubation of that precious child, there's a huge proliferation of brain cells. Huge proliferation of brain cells. Millions of new brain cells are formed every day. But here's this mother not getting enough oxygen for herself and giving less oxygen to that kid she's carrying. So most of those new brain cells die because in 4 to 6 minutes of oxygen deprivation, a brain cell dies. You and I produced 200 billion brain cells, but we lost half of them before we were born. How many knew you were playing with half a deck anyhow? Yeah. We lost half of them. That's true of all of us. But with the half we have, we're doing pretty well. But in the world before the flood, they retained all of them. So they had intelligence. They could observe things that just never strike us. They could see things. Do you know that 30% of your brain is associated with your eyes? in the function of those eyes. They could see things and understand things and remember things, figure out things that we can't. Okay, so with Noah's pre-flood intelligence, his focus on the purpose God assigned for his life, and communication with the Creator Himself, he was able to complete the construction of the ark from the basic instructions we find in Scripture. There's enough given in Scripture. Now, can a boat like that be made out of wood and survive? Well, let's see. There's evidence that ships approaching the size of the ark have in fact existed in ancient times. The ancient Greeks built a ship named Syracusia or Alexandris that carried around 4,000 tons of cargo. That's a lot of cargo, right, mathematician back there? That's a lot of 4,000 tons of cargo? Yes. The pre-modern Chinese also built giant wooden ships. The 15th century seagoing junks of Ambassador Cheng Ho approached the size of the ark, and all of that is documented in the technical literature. Various artists have depicted the ark to reflect the culture and shipbuilding techniques of their day. These depictions are intriguing, but consistently inadequate to survive the flood. You see, at Annapolis, the Naval Academy, only one form of a ship survived that flood for the graduating class. So you can build nice ships, but that flood was pretty fierce, and it was global, no place to land. These depictions are intriguing, but consistently inadequate to survive the flood and safely transport terrestrial inhabitants through the deluge. So let's see what some ideas have been. In Hawaii, long after the death of Kunahona, the first man, according to their legend, the world became a wicked, terrible place to live, and it did. There was one good man left. His name was Nu'u. That's pretty close to Noah. And remember, these are long, long centuries after the fact, and we have the pure record, and then from that's the Bible, and from that, culture after culture deteriorates that. You want to prove that? If I brought 10 people up here and put you on the platform, did you ever play gossip in a party? You whisper in the ear of the first one, and you say, "She dyed her hair red." And then they're to whisper exactly what they heard. By the time you get to the other end, she married a guy with no hair. I mean, try it. Try it. It always deteriorates. You mean having no hair is deterioration? No, no, no. Listen closely. I went in to lease a generator, and the fellow paying for the lease of the generator was Dr. Ron Jenkins. And he was so gracious, and he said, "I'm going to pay for this." And he's been bald since he was in his early 20s. And went in to pay for it, and he started writing out the check. And the lady said, "Yeah, that's what I figured." She said, "I want to tell you something." To the proprietor, she said, "God is just. God is fair. He gave some men brains and some men hair. So enjoy what you've got or what you don't have." Okay, so Nu'u, that's pretty close to Noah. And that is how they depict that ark to have been made. A big canoe. Let's see if we've got more text on that. He made a great canoe with a house on it and filled it with animals. The waters came up over all the earth and killed all the people. That's right. Only Nu'u and his family were saved. They got part of that right. So, that's how things work. That would not survive the flood, but at least we know that There was a flood, a worldwide flood. Ancient Chinese writings refer to a violent catastrophe that happened to the earth. They report that the entire land was flooded. The water went up to the highest mountains and completely covered all the foothills. That's right, covered the highest mountains too. It left the country in desolate condition for years after. That's right. One ancient Chinese classic called the Hinking tells the story of Fui. Quite a name. Fui, whom the Chinese consider to be the father of their civilization. All right, each to his own. This history records that Fui, his wife, 3 sons, and 3 daughters, got that mixed up a little bit, they were daughters-in-law, escaped a great flood. He and his family were the only people left alive on the earth. After the great flood, they repopulated the earth. Well, they got the basics right. An ancient temple in China has a wall painting that shows Fui's boat on the raging waters. Dolphins are swimming around the boat, and a dove with an olive branch in its beak is flying toward it. I like that. Well, there's Fui, and there's his boat. Well, each of these depictions has some problems with the ratios. What's wrong with that one? Well, it's not too narrow, but it's too tall. It has about a 6-to-1 ratio. That's pretty good, but it's too tall. It would capsize very, very readily. Okay, let's go from there. The Toltec. Watch closely. Found in the histories of the Toltec Indians of ancient Mexico is a story of the first world that lasted 1,716 years. I don't know how they got it, but that's almost exactly down to the year. There were 1,700 years from the creation to the flood. They kept good records, and they got that part right. And was destroyed by a great flood that covered even the highest mountains. They got that right. Their story tells of a few men who escaped the destruction in a Taplapicacoli, approximately, which means a closed chest. Following the great flood, these men began to multiply and built a very high Zacoli, or a great tower, like the Tower of Babel, to provide a safe place if the world were destroyed again. However, the languages became confused, so different language groups wandered to other parts of the world. The Toltec claims they started as a family of 7 friends and their wives who spoke the same language. I'll tell you, they're getting this pretty close to right. They crossed great waters, lived in caves, and wandered 104 years. They knew how to count. Till they came to Huejuteplan, southern Mexico, Tlapalan. The story reports that this was 520 years after the great flood. They got it very close, but they didn't get the boat right. They did get a lot of the details, the record right, but that again is too high. It's about a 6-to-1 ratio. That's good, but it's too high. That would capsize in the waters quite readily. Babylonia. Other than the record found in the Bible, the most ancient account of the Great Flood, also called the Deluge, is a tablet inscription found in Babylonia. The tablet referred to an older tablet from which it was copied, but only fragments have been found of that older copy, which is handed down from a previous king of Babylonia. Let's see what they have to say. Because many people lived several hundred years at that time, and they did. The account of the flood could easily have been reported by someone like King Amraphel, Genesis 14:1, who was one of the early kings of Babylonia after the flood. Nice. And here's their depiction of the boat. Didn't have a sail, but they depicted one. That's too tall again. Wouldn't work, but they got the basis of it right. Now, here's an artist's depiction of the construction of Noah's Ark by H. Schindler. Relatively modern times. Did you notice something? as neat as that is, those who lived closer to the account, even though they had some error involved in their accounts, there's only one totally accurate account, and that's from the Scripture. Even though they didn't get it totally right, they got it closer to right than our modern counterparts. That boat, first of all, is not nearly big enough. They have a single window, but it was a whole window system across the top, as we'll see later. They have some holes in the side. Woodpeckers must have gotten to those. I don't know. They're working ingeniously, working hard. They're having to lean over a balcony to get water. And there's the representation of Noah. So at least they take seriously and took seriously the record of the Scripture. Now, closer to the truth, but still not what it should be, was Kirchner. Athanasius Kirchner in the 1600s was careful to follow the Bible's instructions and used a rectilinear hull, that is a long hull, based on the dimensions in Genesis 6:15, including 3 decks, a door in the side, and a window of 1 cubit. Well, he still didn't get it right, but he was headed in the right direction. He's got a bunch of buzzards up there. He has a single window, but the Bible says that Noah was to finish it, finish the window system, finish it a cubit above the entire ark. So you'll see a little later what it really was like. But he had a good idea, had the right idea. His proportions are still too tall. That would not float. At least it would float perhaps, but it would not weather the ark, the deluge. What did the ark really look like? You've got 10 minutes for me to give you some basics. Then tomorrow night, we're going to start here, and if you bring visitors, we'll go quickly through this material. Start here then, basically, and go forward. See how far we can get on how he built the ark. Maybe we can finish it tomorrow night. And again, we'll have these treasures with us. This is a replica, small replica of the ark. From the top, looking straight down. That's the hand of Dr. Ron Jenkins, the intelligent guy. Remember, I told the story, God is just, God is fair. He gave some men brains and some men hair. And that's his hand. That's his finger. He's holding this for me to take the photograph. Notice that's the long, slender ark. This is the end. It's rounded slightly, but basically it's like a barge. That's the top of the window structure above. Windows on each side underneath that, as we'll see shortly, a cubit, have been finished. Now the reason he's holding it there is it is directly adjacent to a photograph. That's a photograph in the Ahora Gorge of Mount Ararat. That's within the vicinity of where our information showed the ark was. This is debris covering it. That's the end of it. That's the side of it. That's the side of it. That's the bottom. You can't tell from where you are, but looking closely at the photograph, there are 3 levels. Not only that, it's broken back a little bit there. You probably can't tell, but knowing what's there, this is the window system paralleling that. That's the other part of the window system paralleling that. That is a section of the living quarters, and that broke, the whole end of it broke off. Can you see what I'm trying to describe? Can you see that? Say yes or no. Yes. So actually this is a photograph on Mount Ararat. That's the top up there. That's the Ahora Gorge. In 1840 there was a terrible explosion. Ararat is volcanic. It's rising. At the time of the flood, our geologists believe it was about 10,000 feet high. It is now 17,000 feet high. It keeps rising. It's honeycombed inside. If you spend too much time there, you get dizzy. It trembles slightly every day. I spent time on that mountain, and it trembles. The closer you get to the top, the more it trembles. Oh, kind of precarious. My wife doesn't want me to go back. She says, "You're too old." She's probably right. And I couldn't climb that. It was 20 years ago when I climbed the mountain. And you'll see a photograph in a moment. I hardly recognize myself. I'm going to get to that in a second. Got 7 minutes. Okay. Does everyone see that structure? That line, of course, goes back there, but that's the end of the photo, and that's under debris. And the ark is broken into at least 4 basic components. That's the side corresponding to that. That's the side corresponding to that. You see the top corresponding to that. The end of it goes like that, and there are 3 sections in there. All right, let's get a little more. Now, that is the helicopter. Mi-8 Russian-built helicopter. For 10 days of use, that cost us $80,000. And I told you the story last night. The money was promised, didn't come through, and my wife had to raise that money while I was over there because they were holding me responsible for it. Nancy, you've been in Greece. Have you ever been in Turkey? Yes. Now, I know the answer to this is no, but I'm going to ask you anyhow. Have you ever seen the inside of a Turkish jail? No. I knew the answer to that. They tell me it's horrible. It's worse than Mamertine prison in Rome. They throw you in, and once every 2 or 3 days they throw you some rancid meat. That's it. Same way in Greece? Used to be. Same. Well, let me ask this question. Have you ever seen the inside of a jail in Greece? You've heard of, she's my friend. She was married to a person of high rank. In fact, she's the lady at White Sands, at Los Alamos, who hired Werner von Braun. What's that? White Sands Missile Range. She hired Werner von Braun, the father of our space program, at White Sands Missile Range. And then later she was attached to Washington and a lot of other things, and she attends the museum and the class I teach over in Glen Rose. So I knew she would know the answer, but you've never seen the inside of any kind of jail, have you? Only on television. Good. Thanks, Nancy. All right. This is the helicopter. It's a wide helicopter. That's just the nose of it. That's Don Shockey, the man who actually was able to find from George Stephen, who was in military and in classified, who was able to get the information on exactly where to look for the ark. That's my buddy Robert Summers. He looks a lot younger. That's my buddy Robert Summers. This is the triumvirate, the advance group. We went early, negotiated the permit together, and I personally negotiated a 49-year lease of Mount Ararat. It's still in effect if we can raise the $50 million to carry it out. I don't think I'm going back. I'm not going to show up. But if anybody here has $50 million, if you've got it, a check won't work. We can get back on the mountain. Anyhow, there I am 20 years younger. I don't recognize that guy. Okay, let's get a bit more, and then we'll close this. This is our entire crew. They even assigned to us a stewardess. For $80,000, they would. That's a 28-place Russian-built Mi-8 helicopter. There's Dr. Don Shockey, who got the information. Dr. Walt Brown. There's the first mate. There's your speaker. There's Walter Brown. There's our photographer. Bob Summers is in there somewhere, and Yuri is there. There is Yuri, the pilot, who had flown Brezhnev and Gorbachev, and he and I are exchanging tie tacks. He's now wearing mine, and I'm wearing his. I don't know why I was dressed up to fly him out of Ararat. Now, that was to go for a negotiation. That guy has black hair. I don't know what he's doing with that. But anyhow, we'll have to stop right there. Got us to the mountain. It's 2 minutes till 8. We got to the mountain, and tomorrow night we're going to start right there. Now that the foundation is built, we can get into the details of how the ark was built. Have you learned anything tonight? I'm having a good time. Now I'm going to step down here with the mic still on. Praise the Lord for modern technology. We're right on schedule. I have a few photographs that I had copied today. This is the wood they brought off the mountain. This is what Ararat looks like from Armenia. This is a piece of the wood Fernand Navarra brought out exactly like this other from the same location. You see it is pitched all the way to every cell. They cut it in order to determine that. This is another shot of Ararat. Another shot of Ararat. These are two sketches. One is a photograph by Alfred Lee of the way the ark was described by Ed Davis, with that structure at the top with the 3 levels, described by Ed Davis, and it had broken, and each component was on a separate side of the gorge running through there. And Ed Davis and I discussed the fact that this was laminated. You could see part of the large beams laminated with those. And this is a sketch where he shows the living quarters, the ark broken, shows the keel, and you'll want to take a look at these. I think probably I'll put these over here, and we can come through and take a look at those in preparation for coming here, because this might alleviate a little bit of the bottleneck. So we'll start there. Now, when you get here, if you spend a lot of time, others will have difficulty, so I know you'll be courteous. That is the wood that came from Noah's Ark. Carbon dates to the exact time. You will see where the scientists cut it at 2 angles and cut it here to see if the pitch went all the way through every cell, and it did and does. Then you'll see the little dog. The little dog with a happy face, not a smiley face, but pleasant face, with the 2 insects, one around each ear. Ferret, it's a little lady dog. She's dressed up with a ferret around her neck. The 2 birds, snake on this side, there's one on the other side, and they're all peacefully going on the ark together. This is a wonderful moment to show this at my home church. And try not to touch even the glass because others will want to see it a little better. All right, we're right on schedule. And have you learned anything? Are you coming back tomorrow night? Tomorrow night, I will bring these back so you can see them again. Bring your friends. Go home and call Aunt Nellie or Aunt Susie or Uncle Johnny and say, have you ever seen a piece of Noah's Ark? Bona fide. They got it off Ararat. They've carbon dated it. They've traced it to the scientific laboratories, through the laboratories, and a little treasure, probably the oldest bronze piece in the world, of a little dog trotting on the ark with his buddies. You'll probably never get another chance to see this. Bring them tomorrow night. Let's pack the place out. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Father, thank you for this wonderful audience tonight. This such a good crowd, such sweet people. Help us, Lord, to do all we can to honor you, to believe the Bible. Thank you that we're safe and secure in Christ, our ark of refuge. In His name, amen. Let's start and come around this